The VC Project.
The one time you didn't press record.
No, I got it now.
Oh, nice. There you go.
And he shows up with a Yankees hat, which I like.
Well, dude, I wear a Yankee hat all the time.
Awesome.
No, and I remember what was it, like 2008 or something when you got drafted? Yeah, I remember that because I remember people talking about this young pitcher that could throw with both hands and how insane that is. Like Shohei Ohtani's impressive, right? He can pitch and he can hit. But I think what you do, and I'm throwing this out to Shohei if he's listening, is actually harder than what he can do.
See, now I should get a raise then.
You should.
$700 million.
He got $700 million. Yes, that's nuts. No, I can't imagine that it's easy to throw with both hands. Like, did you do that as a little kid? This isn't supposed to be an interview of you. I'm just curious. Like,
I started when I was 3. My dad taught me how, and
Wow.
it was not easy. I wasn't until I was in my 20s to where I was finally as efficient left-handed as I was right-handed. It took forever.
Didn't you pitch lefty for a little while when you got hurt too?
I did, but that ended up hurting my rehab process.
Oh,
That
really?
constant pulling of the right shoulder kept setting me back, and I
Wow.
missed about 18 months.
Wow, man.
So I was excited about this podcast because I knew.
Oh, Jeremy's
No.
Hey, Jeremy.
I've been talking about you coming on because I said Craig's going to interview Pat.
I probably have.
And way better than I will interview Pat. So I've been excited about this because I get to hear some fun stories from Pat, which I'm going to try and drag out of him later. But I was like, this is going to be more of an interview about Pat, I think.
I'm sorry. I got to resist the urge to turn it into that. But no, that's so cool, dude. I can't imagine what it's like to go through the minors, to pitch with the Yankees, and then to come up with the A's and the Blue Jays and everybody else. Like, it's cool.
You learn a lot about the other side of life, because when you're coming up in the minor leagues, not only are you not getting paid well, but you're playing with, Latin American players that grew up with nothing.
Sure.
They're there to get their family out of poverty, to possibly get them, in some cases, out of the country, but to provide a better life for them. So I'm there chasing a dream.
Yeah.
They're there chasing their only way out of, in some cases, extreme poverty.
Yeah.
And then you're, living in 1-bedroom apartments in New Jersey with 6 guys. It's a different life. Like, people think they understand what these guys go through, but until you live it, it's a different world. And they're starting to get treated better and paid better in the minor leagues.
Sure.
But that was not the case when I was coming up.
My first gig was as a announcer for a minor league baseball team, the Arizona Diamondbacks affiliate in South Bend at the time. Now it's the Cubs.
And he'll know exactly who it is and what the field is.
The Whitecaps, right?
Now it's the Silverhawks.
There it is.
Now it's the Cubs. They used to be called the Silverhawks. You probably pitched against them at some point. But what I think is so interesting about it is what you just said. And I always think about Michael Jordan when he went to go play in the minors for the White Sox, and how he was like booking that bus and doing all this stuff that those guys didn't have because they're minor league players. And then all of a sudden you got Jordan playing on your team. You got a fancy giant bus and you're driving around like you're in the MLB. And those guys apparently loved that season, even though he was taking one spot that people thought it was unfair to have. Like, they got treated better for an entire year, because minor league baseball is not an easy jam. I say that without knowing anything about it. I'm sure you would say, yeah, because I just envision everybody being basically millionaires like all the professional players that reach the MLB. But it's that slug all the way upward, man.
And do you remember the name Esteban Loaiza at all?
Sure, of course I do.
So I played winter ball in 11 in Mexico, and he married Jenny Rivera, the famous Mexican pop artist.
The singer, yeah.
So she had a massive tour bus. So Esteban was bringing her tour bus on the road, trailing behind our Mexicali, not great bus.
Sure.
So him and a few of the Mexican League veterans are getting to ride on that bus.
That's awesome.
While everybody else is hooping it at
the disparity there isn't fair, man. They should have put everybody on the one bus like MJ did.
I love the fact that we are 4 minutes into this podcast and we have yet to even introduce our guest.
What?
Mr. Craig Collins from WMBD Radio,
Yep.
1470, and a bunch of other numbers because you guys are rolling on FM as well, which is why I
Correct.
listen, because it sounds way better from a technology standpoint.
It does. The range is not as far as the AM band.
No,
but
it barely makes it to my house in Eureka. So.
Okay, right.
Yeah.
But it's great there. Yes.
So, Craig, new to Peoria in the past 2 years?
3 years.
Ish.
I moved here for about a year to produce for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins after my time at WGN. Then I moved to Bloomington to do a year on air there before coming back here and taking the afternoon show here. So I've really been in Peoria a little bit under 4 years total.
Okay, so now you're at 1470. How are you liking it? You liking the Peoria area in general?
Yeah, I like it a lot. The craziest thing to me, and especially for my wife, I put my wife on my show once a day for anyone who hasn't heard it.
She's very entertaining.
She's very entertaining. She's from Mexico. She does Spanish word of the day. People love her. People loved her anywhere else I put her on the, like, I'll go somewhere and I'll talk to somebody for 15 minutes, don't care at all. See Betty for 2 seconds, explode, like just joy, hugging her and stuff. It's amazing. And so this market, I think, has embraced both of us a lot. We get noticed more than I was in Bloomington. Just a bunch of stuff about it is really cool.
I will say that before I had met your wife, and she's got a very traditional name, Betty.
Yes.
I had not even met you yet. A mutual friend of ours had introduced us and wanted us to get together, but I envisioned you as a much older couple just because of her traditional name of Betty, because you don't hear the name Betty anymore.
No, and her name is Beatrice in Mexico, but she Americanizes it to Betty. And you're right, it's very rare. And actually, nobody even calls her that in Mexico. They call her chicken or pollo in Spanish.
That's her nickname, huh?
You're both very young and new to the area. I'm glad everyone's embracing you.
Yes.
We definitely love having you here.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, like when you get to these, like Mexico, every player has a nickname.
Oh, yeah.
And they nickname me Pulpo, Pulpo, octopus.
Nice.
Because of the two arms.
Sure. That makes sense.
Okay,
That's how
that's
my
really
teammates-
good. I like
That's amazing. Pulpo?
El Pulpo, yeah.
Pulpo. Yeah, no, they nickname everybody. I have a nickname with my family, and it's just the Gringo, because I'm the only American guy in the entire family. So it's like, oh, the Gringo's here.
So what's her nationality?
Mexico. She's
Mexico.
Mexican,
Okay.
yeah.
What part?
She's from San Luis Potosí, so it's right in the center of the country.
Okay.
No beaches anywhere near it. I've been to Mexico 20 times. I haven't even sniffed a beach, which makes me very sad.
What are some of the other big cities around there?
Monterey is one of the bigger cities,
Okay,
pretty
there's-
close by.
One of our clients has a facility there. We do work.
Yeah, DF is like 4 hours away. So if
Okay.
you get to the city, Mexico City, that's not that far.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But you've never been to a beach?
Never, not once. I've been to Mexico a ridiculous amount of times.
I've been to Mexico probably about 10 times. 9 of those were on a beach. Once was an excursion to Rio Bravo with a bunch of buddies, and we almost died.
Yeah. The amount of people who tell me that they've almost never been to Mexico, not on a beach, is insane.
No, I did it once. We did. I was down there for my birthday, visiting a buddy of mine who was teaching at Texas A&M in Corpus Christi.
Nice.
And we had a 3-day weekend free, and another buddy of mine had come down. So it was just 3 dudes. We're sitting at a steakhouse. It was my birthday weekend. I'd just gotten divorced. I'm all depressed. And they're like, dude, we need to cheer you up. What do you want to do? And I go, completely joking, I said, let's go to Mexico and go to a cockfight. So we rounded up in the truck.
Nice.
Gringo move right there.
To Rio Bravo, Mexico.
Yeah, El Gringo over here.
We pull up at this, so we find a hotel. We pull up this place, and I'm like, there is no way we're staying here. There's got to be a Holiday Inn or something around here. There is not. Right. It was unbelievable. My buddy Chuck goes in. He comes back out, and he goes, all right, I got the hotel. Don't even worry about it. I'm like, how much was it? He goes,
$7.
It was exactly $7. It was exactly $7.
Glad I nailed that.
Not each. It was $7 for all of us. We walk in. I got to show you the pictures when we get offline later.
That's awesome.
It, like, the toilet was just sitting in the middle of the room.
Yep.
And the mattresses were thrown on the ground.
I've been in these places.
We walk out of this place and we find the concierge, if that's what you want to call it.
Sure.
And so we're looking for a cockfight, and we're explaining this thing. He's trying to, and he speaks Spanish, so he not fluently, even though he's Mexican, but just he's been in America long enough. It's been a while, right? So he's saying this, and she says, "No, you go down here, around here." And, I look down this alley, and I'm like, "Oh my God, we're gonna die." Right? So, and I'm like, "This can't be real." So we round the corner, and there's exactly what she said: some old guy in a rocking chair playing a banjo. Ask him. We asked this guy. He points in the direction. Walk a few more blocks. Round the corner, massive arena.
I was thinking that the
chickens
fight,
everywhere.
I was thinking the fight was going to be incredible. Like everything else about the town, terrible, but the cockfight amazing.
This is a bucket list item that you think is a bucket list item until you experience it and you realize this is messed up.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
It was so messed up. And then the night just got worse from there. We ended up hanging out with the Federales all night.
Okay.
Which was like they started hanging out with us, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was so drunk at the time. My buddies, I'm asking him, why are these guys with machine guns following us around? He's like, oh, they're genuinely concerned that we're going to get kidnapped by the cartels, so they're going to hang with us tonight because they don't need an incident. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And like 5 minutes later, I'm like, this is a wait, what did you just say? Like it hadn't processed yet. Too much mezcal. It was the longest night ever. I was very happy to get home the next morning and find an IHOP. So, but no, that's my
That's amazing.
Non-beach Mexico experience,
yeah.
probably different than
Yeah, it's about the same. It's about the same as all of them.
So I don't get as many fun stories as Pat does with the MLB, but
Sure.
That's as close as I get talking about Mexico.
And I saw you co-host the Chad Benson's show from time to time as
So
well.
I do a couple things. I fill in on WIBC in Indianapolis as their morning show fill-in host. So they have a main guy, and then I do the Chad Benson show, which is a national show. I've been doing both of those for longer than I've been here in Peoria, and I'm kind of amazed that they keep hiring me to do it.
How'd you get to meet him, or how'd that come about?
Part of it's a consultant that I know who winds up working with those guys, who works with Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins, who are a midday show, and they're nationally syndicated too. And part of it is just being in the right place at the right time. There was an opportunity, and somebody thought of me, and then boom, I've been doing it for 4 years.
Are you doing those out of the studio here in Peoria then?
No, I do it in my basement.
Oh, okay.
So I have a thing similar to your setup here, which is just a one mic setup. And I do, they shouldn't know this. If anybody in Indianapolis or Chad is listening, I go to their studios in DC. I go to Indianapolis. That's where I'm doing the show from. But no, it's in my basement.
I'm always amazed. I spent, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years working in radio. Granted, not the same, because talk radio is drastically different than top 40
Sure.
rock, which is what I was doing. And I think I was live on air for like an hour, and the other 4 hours of my show was pre-recorded,
Sure.
which people don't understand. I mean, and you're talking about syndication, going over satellite, all kinds of other stuff. But what's interesting, I would always love recording my show. I'd be live from 6 to 7, and then 7 to midnight was always recorded. I'd go out with my girlfriend to eat dinner, and we'd be sitting at a restaurant, and you're on in the background. And the waitress ultimately would hear me talking, and then hear me talking, and kind of do one of these things.
Yeah.
Right. And it was so weird. It's really weird to get used to. But what most people don't realize in radio is that they're all nationally syndicated people, or, you're doing a show halfway across the country.
Yep.
And you can do it from almost anywhere.
Oh, dude, the thing that drives my wife crazy is, so whenever I fill in on Chad, and I did it today, actually, so I'll probably do this later tonight, is I pick some station at some point throughout the day and listen to myself. And I can do it all day long, because there's some station somewhere in the country that's airing it. And Betty's like, "You've heard this 3 times." I'm like, "Yeah, but I didn't hear it here. I don't know what they think of me here. I want to know."
Absolutely.
So I put it on. Yeah. It's crazy, but it's a
Working
lot
on
of
the
fun.
craft. That's
Right.
great.
Yes.
But you spent most of your earlier career in Chicago.
Yeah, at WGN Radio, yes.
So
Did that drive you nuts, having all that Cubs content rolling your way then?
I actually produced some of it, dude. It's so funny because the GN is tied to the Cubs brand forever.
Yeah.
The television and the radio.
Steve
The song-
Stone, Harry Carey, that's what I grew up on.
Exactly. And the year that they won the World Series is the year after GN got rid of them. So GN finally gave up on the team. I used to produce a show in the afternoon that would come in after a Cubs game, and no one would be listening. We'd look at our meters, and we'd have literally nobody because of how bad that team was. But we get rid of them. They win the World Series. So my boss goes, "What do we do about this? How do we capitalize on people thinking GN and the Cubs are tied together? We'll just do a post-game show like we're doing the show." So we just did the post-game as if we played the actual game on air.
Yeah.
And it was so weird because there were so many legalities to it. We had to be so careful. It was like baseball night on WGN every night. And it was just about the Cubs and just in the World Series. But I produced those things, man.
The numbers had to be huge.
They were huge. And the
Yeah.
funniest thing is people were calling in thinking they listened to it on our radio station.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Yeah, you did. That's fine. We didn't play any clips."
To this day, I didn't know that WGN wasn't connected to the Cubs still.
The TV is. The radio isn't anymore.
Interesting.
They lost them, yeah. But
So maybe that was the
pretended.
curse then.
Maybe.
That's all it took.
Although I will tell you, I saw 3 grown men weep when the Cubs actually won the World Series. And I'm sitting there with a Yankee hat on at the time, too. And they're looking at me like, wrong producer, wrong guy in the room.
you produced it with the Yankee hat on.
Yes, I did. Every
All
day.
right.
Yeah.
I was with the Mariners that year, and
Really?
we were in the playoff hunt. So what they do is you have to pay for your playoff tickets as a player. You don't just get an allotment, and you have to request them before the playoffs happen. So whatever you want, whatever series you want tickets for, you request what you want, and then your credit card's charged if you get there. So I wasn't sure if I was going to make the playoff roster or not. We were kind of on the fence, but I was like, well, let's just put Chicago World Series tickets at Wrigley Field. I do this in like September, not thinking really much of it. And then like as they're making that push, I'm like, wait, I might be getting some World Series tickets here, because we ended up we were eliminated the night before the season ended.
Yeah.
But sure enough, they made the World Series, and 2 days later, I had to sign for a package, got 4 tickets.
Wow.
All 3 games in Wrigley Field. I didn't go to a single game. I gave them all to my in-laws here, which got me some good points there.
I'm sure it did. Yeah.
But yeah.
Why wouldn't you go? Did you not want to go because you're a pitcher?
I felt like they would get way more out of it. I'm like, I get to see this every day. I don't really care. I was in the city with them enjoying all the fun stuff, but
He was just sucking up to the.
Oh yeah.
No, that's amazing, man. I don't think I'd ever be at a point where like, the World Series isn't that great for me unless I'm in it. That's amazing.
Yeah, they had a pretty good time there. That was a cool thing.
Sure. Very cool.
How long were you in Chicago?
I was living in Chicago for a little over 13 years. I was with WGN for about 9. Most of the time as a producer. Yeah.
That's so. Yeah, so not doing much on air at all up there, and until you came to Peoria?
I was a sidekick on a few shows, so you heard my voice a lot. There are some GN listeners that still listen to my show today, but I was never the lead part of any of those shows.
Okay, so in small town radio, which is where I was at, not Chicago or Peoria, smaller market than even Peoria, the talent, the on-air people have to record the radio commercials. Yep. They have to do. You got to do everything, right? Yes. You're producing. You're kind of doing it all. I remember we hired a DJ out of Chicago that came down, and we handed him a commercial to record. He goes, "What is this? I'm not doing this. How much are you paying me extra to do this?" I'm like, what do you, I don't know, man. I just have to do them. I got a whole stack of them here. Like, just go knock them all out, right? It was so weird. So did you have to do, like, were you doing more commercial spots too at all?
So at GN, it was different. We did have a bunch of employees doing, like, there was one guy that just did some of the commercial content, another guy that did voiceover. They're all in house.
And they want to mix up the voice content.
Right.
I'm sure for a
lot.
Well,
they actually even hired actors and actresses in the Chicagoland area. So it wasn't even really our internal talent. If you listen to the radio station here in Peoria, you'll recognize some of the voices on some of the commercials because it is the people that are in house, and it's fun. I like both versions of it, but I did have a similar first experience to, like, hey, do this for me. Be like, I just hand it to who? What other guy does this? They're like, no, that's you. You do every part of this.
Well, welcome to Peoria. Welcome to the small market. But of course, the cost of advertising here is much less than the cost of advertising in Chicago.
Sure,
as well,
of course.
Which always blew my mind that you're just selling air.
Well, and I got to be honest, I think here the effectiveness of the ad is actually pretty significant. I think the amount of people who listen to radio in markets that are this size, and I wouldn't call this small, I'd call Peoria medium-sized market.
Medium-sized,
yeah, for sure.
Well, your return on investment is huge.
I think it's huge. I think you can reach, like, and again, this just goes from my experience walking around and Betty and I getting recognized by people. And, like, I'm not a fit, like, I'm a voice. It's not my face that people, like, respond to all the time. It's sort of amazing. I don't think that there's a lot of communities quite like this one where the amount of people that seem to consume some part of it is such a high percentage of people who live here.
So you're a tech guy.
Yes. I love technology.
I heard you on your show yesterday talking a little bit about having Alexas all over your house.
Sure.
And the love of technology. What is your favorite tech that you currently own is in your house right now?
Okay, so my favorite thing is just the smart house as a whole. So I've bragged about this before, and you tell me if any of this is dangerous, because I think it is, and my wife tells me it is. But when I show up at my home, my front light turns on automatically because of the GPS tracking of my phone. My garage door opens, and my door unlocks to my side door in my house. So I do nothing. I don't need to bring keys. I wish I could start my car this way.
It's
only
my guy
dangerous
right
if your password is Yankees 1.
Okay, yeah, no, it's not. It's Yankees 2. Jeter's number 2, buddy. But no, yeah, it's fine. So every part of my life is somewhat automated by the technology in my house. I do tell all my lights to turn on and off. My wife thinks it's the dumbest thing we have because it's not that hard to stand up and flick them on and off, but it's just better.
If you asked my kids, it's like impossible. So I am welcoming to the voice commands.
Sure.
And my kids, they don't know anything else at this point.
Yeah.
The smart home is what they know.
Nice.
Which is really interesting. It's good to see you embracing that. Do you have the Alexa enabled oven yet?
No, I've seen things about that though. And there's a microwave too. And again, the confusion to me, and I know they got the robot, like, how do I get the food into the oven to turn it on with my voice without it being me? That's the part they need.
So Alexa's your go-to at the house.
It is my go-to at the house, but until they can actually put the food item inside the cooking apparatus, I'm not going that far.
Yeah. Anytime that you're triggering a gas appliance of some kind, to me,
dangerous.
You want to be around it?
It's a little dangerous.
Yeah.
I finally added the garage door opener to do all of that.
Nice.
And then I realized I got so frustrated that you couldn't just voice command the door to open. Mm-hmm. And then I realized, well, I guess you could stand outside the house and yell through the window, Alexa, open the garage door, and it would do that.
Okay. I love that you mentioned this. I've locked myself out of my house a tremendous amount of times.
Does it work?
Well, here's the funny thing. Because I have all that technology, I don't really take my keys everywhere. So sometimes the door gets locked behind me. And I do. I crack open a window. I yell into the window, Alexa, open the side door. And then I got to give it a little code. My side door opens. I go
Okay,
back
so
in the house.
that's dangerous.
Okay.
He's got a code though.
I got to cut. Yeah. All my
Yeah.
neighbors have probably heard it at this point,
Well,
but I
he's
got
yelling
it.
it through the window, but because I know that my garage door will not allow it to open through voice prompt. It's
Oh,
just
yeah.
one of the limitations of it. But I've never really tried my front door lock.
Nope. Mine works. Side door works just fine.
I need to try that.
Yeah. And
Any of that hooked up in my house.
I love it. Personally, I think it's great because then I don't have to admit the stupidity of locking myself out of the house. I just can break in.
My wife is frustrated because I'm a tech guy, so everything I have is tech. But the one thing that's not allowed in the house is security cameras. I don't know if she's afraid that somebody's going to hack in,
Sure.
like, see everything. Or I remember we'd first moved in together, and I had cameras everywhere.
Yeah.
And then she would we'd sit on the couch, and I'd see her inching.
Get out of the way of the shot.
She'd be out of the way of the shot, was watching TV, and I go,
Sure.
"What are you doing?" And she's, somebody could be watching. No one's watching us. Come on now. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So we don't really have security cameras other than to make one or two snuck outside that, just kind of cover the yard, if you will.
I have security cameras
But
within
not
the
in the
house.
house, yeah.
I have inside, outside, and actually I have the similar experience. And Betty is pretty sure that Alexa is always listening to us.
Oh, it is.
So
100%.
you got to plug those things or unplug those things in order to have any kind of conversation.
We were just talking about that with Jonathan and Big Brother listening and all that. But I was saying that, I mean, what are they going to listen to at my house?
Well, I'll say this. At this point, with how much technology I embraced, the data on me must be insane. There's no way to get it back at that point. They would know everything about me. I think it's,
Do you find
hopeless.
your targeted advertising is very specific and correct?
Yeah, I do.
There it is.
Yeah, very often I just talked about something and then I get 6 ads for it.
Well, the more they learn about you, the more they'll, well, again, we were talking about another podcast, that data analytics, right? That everything that they're consuming from Facebook and Instagram and X and everything else is that data is so valuable to these companies for strictly even advertising purposes. Forget the TikTok dropping on you from the Chinese government. Just that data for advertising and that specific stuff is unbelievable.
Well, look, I talk a lot about politics on my show, and a lot of listeners have unique opinions about our security and whatnot. But I would say this: if my data is really just improving the ads that get sent to me, the stuff I'm likely to buy, I get more Yankee products sent my way. I'm okay with that part. I don't want China to have all my information.
Where did
if,
that love
Best
affair
Buy
come
has
from for the
The
Yankees?
Yankees?
Yeah, how did
I'm
that
from
start?
Jersey. I'm from the East Coast.
What part of Jersey?
I'm from Hazlitt, so just outside of New York City. It was
Okay.
like a 45-minute train ride.
Yeah.
So my grandfather was a giant fan of everything other than the Yankees. He loved the Giants when they were in New York. He loved the Mets. And he took me to a Yankee game just trying to show me that they weren't a great baseball team. This was the early 90s. And I fell in love with Don Mattingly. I
man.
fell in love with the team and loved him ever since. And
Complete
it just made,
backfire there.
it made my grandpa so mad. I think Don Mattingly hit a home run the first game I ever saw. And I'm like,
Next, he's
I'm
going to
in.
tell me I caught it. And
Yeah.
now, lifelong Yankee fan.
that would be amazing. Yeah, no, it didn't come anywhere near me. Plus, it probably would have bounced off my hand. But no, it's that, and it's the one team that I think I followed my whole life, man.
That's pretty cool.
How long were you with the Yankees?
I was with them for 7 years, but I was never called up with them. So I played out my whole minor league contract. When you sign, I think it's still the same. You sign a 7-year contract, and that only changes if you get added to the 40-man roster. Otherwise, they either have to cut you and release you, or you have to retire. That's the only way out of that contract.
Were you drafted to the Yankees out of college, right?
He's drafted to the Yankees.
That's right.
He pitched in spring training a few times.
Oh, yeah.
You
Yeah.
pitched in AAA, which is the highest affiliate of the Yankees.
Yep, I
You
was
were
there a
right
while.
on that doorstep for a while, man.
And I was in Trenton for a long time, too, not
Yeah.
far from where you were there in New
Sure.
Jersey.
Yeah.
So a lot of time there in the Northeast. But, that was something I actually played for Mattingly, too, during the COVID season with the Marlins in 2020.
That's awesome, man.
So-
How is Mattingly as a manager?
He's
Break bad on him right now. Tell him he's terrible.
No,
I'm
he's
kidding.
He's exactly who you think he is. He's calm, even keeled, the same guy every day.
Awesome.
You'll run into managers that are kind of running with the team.
That probably makes a good manager, that evenness.
It does. That's the best type of manager you can, because you're gonna have inevitably you're gonna have struggles. No matter how good you are, you're gonna struggle. And just having a manager that kind of understands that, and that comes from his playing days too, because not all managers played. But he played forever.
This is the point in the conversation where I'm very tempted to ask a bunch more questions.
Hit me.
Pat.
No,
Okay.
take it.
Well, one of them is the changes in the world of baseball. So managers today, and I hate Aaron Boone. I'm sorry. I liked him as a player. I don't like him as a manager.
He's still there, right?
He's still there.
Yeah,
He should
not
be
going-
fired. Brian Cashman should also be fired, but that's my fan opinion. It'd be great if they both got canned. But managers today are very different than they were in like the Joe Torre era, right? Like Joe Torre was this stoic guy who you didn't want to upset. It was like making dad mad if you did something wrong. Today, it feels like the manager has to be your best friend, or the players will turn on these guys and they'll lose their job. The players seem to dictate more of who's coaching them as opposed to the opposite from the past.
And you're right to say that. Depending on the situation, you still have your old school managers that
Sure.
did things a certain way. But if you look the last 5 or 10 years, you have the front office calling the shots more than the managers, where they're setting the lineup every day. They tell the manager, hey, this is who we need to run out there.
Yeah.
This is what the numbers say. And I think at times the human element of baseball is kind of taken for granted. You forget that you're running out there with a guy that might have something going on at home or somewhere else. So that whatever analytical number you have attached to him doesn't necessarily mean anything. Now, over the course of the season, it'll show up. But I think you see this with the Dodgers too. The playoffs are a different beast. You need that gut instinct, that thing that really sets these legendary managers apart. There's a real thing about baseball and just the unpredictability of it.
Well, yeah, and actually, I've seen a lot of the teams that do very well in the playoffs right now are teams that are squeaking into the playoffs. Yeah. You would think that, and back in the day, baseball didn't have that. You had like 4 teams make the postseason, or 2 teams make the postseason. Now you got a ridiculous amount of teams, so the giant regular season feels less valuable. But you see these teams as a whole just sort of merge together right in September.
Hot at the right time. Look at the Rangers this year.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, unbelievable. Yeah, it's
right. It's weird to think about that in baseball, though, because the one thing I've always thought is different about your sport, your profession than any other one is how much more of a team game it is. Basketball, you need 2 guys. You need one amazing player, one very, very good player. You're going to do fairly well. A lot of sports feel that way to me. Even football feels that way to me a little bit if you have stars in certain positions. But in a baseball game, you can have an incredible game. You hand the ball to somebody in the 7th inning that's not your best closer, not your premier pitcher. That guy can win or lose that game in that moment. He's as important as anybody else.
In the length of the season, too, has really just, the more I look at it, 182 games. Like, we're not getting close to that in any other professional sport. And I know you're not killing a ton of calories when you're out there, but you're still out there on your feet for 2.5, 3 hours a day. You're there at the stadium from 1 until midnight, 6 to 7 days a week for 6 straight months. It takes a toll on you, and you need. That's where that team element comes in too, where you just can't ride a guy, maybe a starter every 5th.
How long are the seasons, or how many games are there in the minors? Is it just as many?
Like 100 or maybe 140. It's like it was like a month short of a major league season, but still a ton.
It depends on what you're playing in too, right? Like single A, double A, triple A.
Triple A goes a little bit longer. Yeah. But the hard thing about that is you're not taking a private plane and staying at a 5-star hotel. You're taking a 13-hour bus ride overnight, playing that night, and staying in a suboptimal hotel.
One of my favorite stories, and I don't know if you want to tell it or not, but one of my favorite stories that you've told about playing in the minors, and you don't have to drop names because you were talking about.
You kind of could if you want to.
I think this was the Yankees.
Oh, you definitely could.
Correct me if I'm wrong. And you were talking about the pay disparities.
Oh,
when you wrote all this.
I can tell this story.
So you know what story I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, and you're going to appreciate this. So in 2000, I don't know, it was 10 or 11. Kagawa, do you remember him?
Yes, sure.
I think the Yankees paid,
my numbers
could be wrong, I think $20 million to purchase him from the team from Japan, and then him an additional $20 million.
Yeah.
And it just did not work out from the first couple of starts. So he's living in Manhattan with his translator in his, nice apartment, and then commuting to Scranton. That didn't work out at Scranton. So then he gets sent to Trenton, where I am, commuting back and forth every day. And he's a nice guy. It's not like he was, mean to any of the players by any stretch, but we were making $1,100, or I think $1,100 or $1,600 a month, whatever it was, and everybody was making the same thing. Living in New York, like in the outskirts of New York, having to pay East Coast rent.
Wow.
One day, the paychecks come in an envelope, and in his voice, he lifts up his check and goes, "Oh, so heavy, so heavy."
Walking around the clubhouse.
That's so mean.
We're seeing like $600, and his has to be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Whatever $4 million is prorated for.
Yeah, it's a lot more zeros on his check.
But I figured you'd like that Kagawa story,
dude. It's funny. Justin Upton got drafted and was sent to South Bend, Indiana, his first season. I think his signing bonus was like $10 million or something. And so he gets to South Bend and he's looking around. He's like, "Oh my God, this place! I'm trapped in the middle of nowhere. I got drafted by the Arizona Diamondbacks, and he has way more money than the rest of the team has." And I think he threw a couple nicer events. I actually am pretty sure he threw one because I might have been there. But it was the only thing he did that made you feel like you were a part of his level of success as a team, which seemed like it went a long way. But the rest of the time, they did seem to look at him like, man, how much more money are you getting than the rest of us for this?
And honestly, we didn't feel bad for the amount of money he was making, but he's halfway across the world.
Sure.
Of course, he wants to be with his family, and he obviously wants to pitch well in New York City.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out. So it wasn't one of those things where anybody had any animosity towards him. It was just him being funny. And at the time, they weren't as available, but the Japanese had the Zep belts, which are like the kind of patent leather that are shiny with like a huge gold belt buckle.
Sure.
And I would comment to his translator on like how much I wanted one. And sure enough, one day I showed up and he had one waiting for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm curious in the minor leagues for New York, because it is such a unique animal. Do they tell you all the time, like if you get to the majors, it's going to be stressful, the pressure is going to be insane? Like, is that a big part of going through the minors for that team?
So that shaped a big part of how I do interviews. We immediately had media training.
Wow.
The first day we were drafted, you go through media training 1 or 2 days a week, to where the director of PR, I believe it was Jason Zillow, and he still might be there. He would come in and show you bad interviews that had happened from guys that are still there in the system saying,
wow,
hey, this is what you do not do.
Yeah.
And then they would show a Jeter interview or somebody else, their typical, the Yankee way to do the interview. It's very buttoned up. It's very humble. Don't give them any
very professional.
Don't give them any bulletin board material.
Yeah.
And from that time, that's how I conducted every interview. I never let myself out. Can I was telling you about the Dan Patrick interview?
Sure.
Never put myself out there. And now looking back, that's not what people want to see. People want to see, how do you actually feel? What are you really thinking?
Yeah.
The raw, uncut interview.
And they want some insight to that. But the Yankees were very, very particular with their media training. And, that's why their brand is the way that it is.
Well, I think it's every professional, forget sport, just corporation, right? They are on top of professionalism and how they want their brand marketed out to the world.
Clean shaven every day.
Yeah.
You could have a mustache if you were in the big leagues. That was it. Sideburns to the middle of your ear, nothing coming out of the hat.
Yeah, no, it's micromanaged a lot, and they're saying that it's one reason that maybe some free agents don't want to go play for the Yankees. I don't know if I believe that. I feel like if it's the Yankees, you'll shave.
I don't know. Some of these guys, they're pretty stuck in their ways, and we would have, if we were even on a minor league road trip, if we were outside of our hotel room without a collared shirt on, $100 fine.
Wow.
Every single time if you were caught.
Wow.
So they taught you how to be a professional. So from one standpoint, it was great that, because I went from there to the A's, which was the Wild West. Like, guys are showing up to spring training in flip-flops and board shorts and a cutoff. I'm like, what is this?
Did you know Billy Beane at all?
He was the GM at the time.
Yeah.
I never had much interaction with him, just a hi and things like that, but I never had like an in-depth conversation with him.
When they put you on that team, how big was analytics? How big was the Moneyball stuff?
It was a big part of it. And I believe Farhan Zaidi was there at the time too, who kind of, or had maybe just left. But if you'll look at my career path between the Dodgers, the Giants, Farhan was somewhere kind of along the way, kind of fighting for me a little bit, because if you look at, my scouting reports, it's, no, this guy's not going to make it above AA, AAA. He doesn't have the stuff. And it took somebody who looked outside the box a little bit, looked at the matchups and realized that, okay, there's something different there.
Yeah.
And that's, fortunately, I got that first opportunity in the big leagues, and it led to the 5 years.
I was going to ask you, if you're like a Moneyball, you as a player, is that valuable in the world? Because the fact that you're a switch pitcher feels like there's got to be something that goes off the charts in the world of stats there. You'll never have a bad matchup against somebody.
Well,
okay.
If I had some better stuff, maybe. But no, you would think, and there was that matchup advantage. Obviously, the switch hitters kill that.
Yeah,
switch hitters, I think, hit close to 400.
They should have picked first. You shouldn't have had to pick first.
I wish I would have fought for that harder.
Yeah, say that's your advantage, man.
Yeah, the rule was I had to tell the hitters which way I was going to pitch. So that means I have the advantage over every hitter that's either left-handed or right-handed, theoretically. But a switch hitter got to wait until I decided. So,
well, hence the Venditte Rule. That's now in Major League Baseball. So, but how, when they determine that decision as to who makes the decision first, what went in? I mean, is that all Major League? Did they ask your opinion at anything like that as being the only pitcher that could do that? I was
talking about 2008. I played for the Staten Island Yankees, which was the rookie ball team. We were playing the Mets affiliate, the Brooklyn Cyclones, on Coney Island.
Yes.
At I don't remember the name of the Keyspan Park, I believe is the name of it. The Mets game was rained out that night. This is my very first professional outing. No rookie ball games are ever on TV. But SNY, since there was no Mets game that night, has a camera system all set up at, in Brooklyn at the minor league park. they broadcast our game live. So this matchup comes up where there was a switch hitter, and the Yankees coaches and people that were in town said, hey, just keep switching back and forth until they make you decide. I said, okay.
Yeah.
So I went up there right-handed, switched to my left, the batter would switch, went back and forth for like 5 minutes.
This YouTube video is great.
It is amazing.
So
it is.
That's what started all this. And then the next day they had the rule come down that I had to declare first. That night the umpire let me pick second. And, this guy had never seen a right-on-right curveball before. So he swung at a pitch that was, not a very competitive pitch, but he swung, struck out. And then that was the next day the rule came down. I had no input on any of that.
Wow.
And nobody would have ever seen that had the Mets game not got rained out that night. No one ever.
That rule might have never existed or not
the
for a
rule
while.
came down, but the YouTube video and all that people still talk about from time to time would have never been.
Is there anybody else that's trying to do what you did?
There's a kid right now in Mississippi State.
Okay.
He's incredible.
Is he?
95 miles an hour right-handed, 93 left-handed.
Wow.
He was the Friday night starter as a freshman last year in the SEC. He had some struggles, but
he's called you, hasn't he?
I've talked to him.
Okay.
But he's big time. Like CC Sabathia's wife is his agent.
Wow.
He was drafted by the Brewers already in the 17th round out of high school.
Wow.
Out of high school.
Yeah. He's legit. He will, as long as he stays healthy, he'll pitch in the major leagues with both hands.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's how many of those that have been in existence in the major leagues?
I was the only one that relied on it. So I relied on that to get called up. There was a guy named Greg Harris who pitched for the Expos and a number of other teams as a righty for 10 years. And then in his very last outing, they let him switch back and forth. But if you watch the video, it's not.
But how long ago was that?
That was in the mid 90s. And then there was 100 years before that. There was a guy by the name, I believe, of Tony Mulaney. He was
very few.
Yeah.
I love that he's
Very,
an expert
very
on
few.
this, though. You've
Well,
probably been asked that question.
There's
a lot
only a
times,
few
yeah.
of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I was, to me, I'm the only one that truly relied on it as my form of making a living.
Did you ever feel like, because I remember when the A's especially put you on their team and they put you in the majors, they said you were there just to get outs. They did not say you were there to be a gimmick or a show of any kind at all. Did you ever feel like that? There was some pressure for you to be more of a bigger deal because of how unique you were?
The pressure came for me I knew if I ever got the opportunity in my big leagues, in the big leagues, it was going to come down to that first outing.
Yeah.
Because if I had a bad one, there was a chance I'd never get back.
Wow.
And it took me 7 years to get there. And I had seen so many horror stories with guys because it's a big jump. They ask what's the biggest jump. Some people say AA. The biggest jump is from AAA to the major leagues.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
And it's just a completely different ball game. And I knew that if it was a bad one, it would probably never happen again. Fortunately, it was a good first outing for me, and that led to 5 years of other opportunities through different teams. But that's where I felt the most stress. I never really felt it on the switching back and forth.
When do you feel like you made it when you're in Major League Baseball? Is it the first day you get called up, or is it some other time?
Honestly, yeah. For a guy like me that was seven years in the minor leagues, once I got that first day, I'm like, okay, whatever I get
putting on that jersey, you're running out into that. Yeah, that's awesome.
It made everything worthwhile. But then once you get there, you're like, I don't want to ever go back to the minor leagues. And unfortunately, there was seasons where I went back and forth 8 times with the Dodgers.
Yeah.
So with the minor leagues, when you played in other countries, is that still an affiliation with American baseball system?
The leagues I played in, so I played in their major leagues, if you will, of those different countries. So the Venezuela, Mexico, the Dominican Republic have many leagues. But the leagues that I played in are tied to Major League Baseball, to where they're the ultimate. They can say, hey, that guy's not pitching tonight. Bring him back home. Get him home to the States. But so many guys are tied to affiliates. These teams, they want these Major League players to come play, the AAA players. So they have this sense of responsibility to the organization.
I guess my question, because I definitely don't know enough about this. Are they affiliated with the United States Major League teams?
No, these are completely
separate.
But they listen to whatever these Major League teams tell them as far as like usage of the player, whether or not the player is going to stay or come home.
So how many countries did you play in then?
4. Played games in a lot. I played in Germany, the Czech Republic.
No, but like 4 of the teams.
So in professional, I played professionally in Venezuela, the Dominican, and Mexico in those leagues. and then internationally for Italy, but that was on their national team.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was that in the World Baseball Classic?
World Baseball
yeah,
Classic.
you pitched for
and then-
Italy. How does that happen, by the way, too? Because you're not born in Italy, but obviously you got Italian in you.
Yep.
So how do they ask you
You're
to
a
pitch for
citizen
that?
now.
So
Yeah.
2012, in preparation for the 2013 Classic, they hired an attorney and got my citizenship and my passport
Nice.
for me. And then I played in the Classic with them, and then I went back. The Classic was fun, but the best part was going for the European Championships.
Sure.
To where you're playing with, and I've talked about this on here before, but you're playing not with really minor leaguers. I was one of 2 minor leaguers on the team at the time. You're playing with gardeners, with people that are teachers, that have other day jobs.
Wow.
And just play baseball for the pure passion of it. And then throw in now you're playing for your country against, the Netherlands and Germany.
It's like in Peoria, it's the Sunday morning leaguers
Well, yeah.
or whatever, right? It's just everybody around town.
It's funny. I was just thinking about that. Have you ever pitched in the Sunday Morning League here in Peoria?
Andy Shaddy got me to go one time.
Really?
I was just going to go play catch with him just before the game started. This is 2 summers ago. The next thing I know, I have a jersey on, and I'm starting the game. 2 years after my last pit,
How'd you pitch? Did you pitch well?
Being the first guy.
Okay, good. There you go. He deserved it, probably. He was crowding the plate, maybe. Who knows?
I pitched it one time, but that was a one and done for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How were guys excited to face you in that league or no?
I wasn't there long enough to know. Being the first guy, I think I had a couple strikeouts and a flyout, and I was like, I got to get home to my kids.
That's fine.
Like everybody else that you're talking about in the other leagues, right? So,
I got one more baseball question. I know this is
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
But the one other question I have is, were you ever tempted to go play in Japan or in China?
I would have loved to do that. I never had the opportunity to play in Japan. Typically, they like what they don't have over there, which is a big guy that throws hard.
Gotcha.
I was just like every one of their pitchers, crafty, soft. I was much more soft tossing than the ones that they're featuring.
Sure.
But I didn't have enough, even with the two-handedness, to gather that enough attention to go over there and play. I never got offered. I would have had the opportunity been right. I would have taken that, especially towards the back end of my career.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of guys seem to go over there now and play.
They love it. Yeah. I've had a lot of close friends that have gone over there to Korea.
Wow.
And they just talk about how nice it is and how good the culture is, how clean the cities are, how well they're treated.
Wow.
And just they love it.
You think there's any jeopardy of the United States ever having more risk of more people desiring to play anywhere other than here?
No, I don't think so. You look at
didn't that happen with golf recently?
Yeah, it did.
unless you roll out
Saudi
billions
Arabia
of dollars,
money.
then
Yeah,
that's
sure.
a different thing. But the amenities,
He's bouncing from this podcast if he gets 10 million from the Saudis.
the stadiums are just they're like nothing else in the world here. What's your favorite ballpark?
Well, my favorite was the other Yankee Stadium,
The old
one they knocked down.
Okay.
Yeah, that one was great because I have all my memories there. And they won although they did win the first World Series and the new one too, but they won in 23 when they opened the old one. I don't know. There's a lot of really fun ones. Wrigley's fun. Do you like Wrigley? Have you pitched at Wrigley?
I've never pitched there. You'll appreciate this though. The new Yankee Stadium, when you go as a visitor, they want it to be as welcoming for you as possible.
Terrible decision. No, sorry. Go ahead.
So when you come, when it comes time for free agency,
yes,
you want to sign.
Oh, I get that.
You go to most ballparks, they'll have like tacos or something before the game. Yankee Stadium, they're having lobster rolls, fillets, every type of food you could imagine is at your disposal.
Wow.
You want Broadway tickets, they'll get you Broadway tickets. They'll get you up into the
that's cool.
The World Trade Center. I was able to tour that.
Wow.
I actually got sent down while we were there once before the game. It was in between batting practice and the game starting. So I went up, packed up my locker. My whole family was in town. It was like the third game of a 4-game set. Ended up, they got us Broadway tickets for the night because you don't stay at the ballpark. If you get sent down, you go back to the hotel.
Sure.
So my family and I, we got to go see Wicked.
Nice. That's
while
cool.
The Toronto Blue Jays were playing against the Yankees.
That's cool. What's your favorite stadium you pitched in?
Probably that's a good question. I would probably have to say the new Yankee Stadium is probably the coolest. It switches depending on the day. My favorite home ballpark was Dodger Stadium. To look up there and to see the 4 stories high right off.
I'm so mad about the Dodgers right now and all the players that they've signed this year. It's very upsetting, but yes, that seems fun.
You'll and as far as culture goes, Dave Roberts and their front office and their veteran leadership with Kershaw and the other guys they have there, they do such a good job of welcoming guys like myself who are if I'm there, I'm the 25th out of 25 guys on that roster.
Sure.
As far as importance, they make you feel like you're such a part of that whole thing that's going on,
Wow.
you forget about all the other stuff. And that was probably my favorite organization to be with.
That's awesome. I like them a little bit more. I'm still very upset that they got Yamamoto, though. It still makes me very sad.
So, Jeremy, they just signed a guy for $700 million, and then what, $345 million?
At $325 million.
They spent over $1 billion on 2 players.
Yeah.
$1 billion.
Although Shohei, I would
so
love
ridiculous.
I would love to hear your idea of like Shohei and all that deferred money. Like that's insane. Most of his contract's going to get paid after he's done playing for the Dodgers.
I don't know the exact amount, but I want to say it's a 13.5% state tax
Mm-hmm.
you pay in California.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing a lot of that has to do with that, and he is not going to be living anywhere near that state when the bulk of
That's
that
fair.
money is paid out.
No, it's fine.
That's pretty smart.
Yeah, it's smart for him. It makes me mad because the Dodgers could sign more players.
Well, but I think if they defer that though, it still opens up the money now, right?
So they didn't get hit with the total amount of salary. I think it was $43 million or something. For the
I
tax
don't know how they
implications.
did it, and I apologize. This is not an audio-visual podcast at all today.
This is not supposed to be an audiovisual podcast.
Yeah, it's fine. It's just audio.
I told you I was excited to hear more about the baseball thing.
Yeah, I can't help it. Yeah,
the
I'm
more
trying.
we talk, like the more stories that come to mind, and
See, secretly I invited Craig on just because he'd be a much better interview for you.
I'm a nerd. I'm a baseball nerd, and I have no talent in your sport, so that's why I like to watch it from afar.
It's a fun game. It
looks fun.
I love the changes that they've made too. Have just been,
Oh, I hate them. You
do?
love them. Well, you're a
Oh.
player. I should respect you saying you like them.
the pace of play.
It's better,
Oh
but
my gosh,
but it's so
much
not
better.
baseball.
Yeah,
The pitch clock. I wanted to protest the one here in Peoria. I wanted a sign that said my show
I'm
name.
all about it.
Oh,
Get
really?
that guy out of the box. No need to adjust.
You work
your
quick a
chain.
lot.
I love to work quick.
Yeah.
That was like the backbone of what I did.
Right. I don't know. There's something about like I loved late in the game when a dude is stepping off the mound 6 times and the guy's stepping out of the box 6 times because it felt like the tension of baseball was sitting there. I never got upset with that. I liked it. And now I can't go to the concession stand and come back. I missed like 3 innings.
You go to a lot of games in Peoria?
I've gone to a few with the Chiefs. I more go to Chicago and St. Louis to see.
See, I figured you'd be a season ticket holder being as big of a baseball fan as you are.
I should. I'll say this. This is mean to say. If it was a Yankees affiliate, I'd be there all the time.
Well, that makes sense.
You're tied to who the players are coming up in the system and things like that. And if you don't care about the organization, chances are you're not going to know one of the 25 guys on that team. Whereas, he's a Yankee fan. He's going to probably know a majority of that high A roster. He's going to know dang near the whole double A roster and for sure the whole triple A roster. Like it's a different beast in the Northeast with how they take their sports. It's everything up there.
Yeah, my uncles used to go to Florida every year for spring training, and they'd always invite me to go, and I never spent as much time as I want to go there. But that seems like a load of fun too. Just spending a month in spring training with all those guys.
I was telling him a story. I'll dial it back a little bit, but A-Rod was dating one of the WWE superstars at the time. I don't remember which one it was.
I do.
Was it whoever it was? He brought her over to the minor league complex.
Okay,
because the Yankees Major League Stadium was right across the street, and she was just watching him work out that day. So you had
she's like a 12.
You had 150 minor leaguers just like not only is A-Rod here. There's a WWE superstar
just hanging
in the
out.
area.
Man, that's
I'm
funny.
eating my peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah, did you talk to A-Rod at all?
They would come around, and those guys were so good. Like Curtis Granderson, Jeter, A-Rod. Anytime they'd come down. Brett Gardner, anytime they'd come down for rehab, they would get us amazing meals. In 2000, it was either 11 or 13. Whenever Jeter came down to Double-A Trenton, he wore the Spider-Man jersey. I'm sure you've seen the pictures.
Yes. Yep.
He had catered in the most unbelievable meal, not just for our team, but for the other side where, fillets, lobsters, everything you could imagine.
Wow.
Just catered in, just saying, hey, I know you guys don't have all this every day, but for these days I'm here, you're going to be taken care of just like you would.
We're doing it 5-star.
Yeah.
It was, and it just makes the guys feel great.
This is why I just, totally took over your podcast for a little bit. I apologize for it. Jeter's the guy that they ask you the question, like, what living person would you like to spend an hour with? Jeter, for me, that'd be incredible. Like, just the guy seems amazing.
And he was in that ownership group when I was with the Marlins too. So he would come address the team, and
they didn't like him there. Well, I mean,
he had a fundamental shift. He was bringing a lot of those Yankee guys. He was trying to bring the Yankee way to Miami. And you look at Mattingly, and there was a ton of minor league coaches from the Yankees that were hired on by the Marlins. And I think it's a big reason they've had the shift that they've had. And I know he's no longer there. But anytime you bring that type of professionalism and integrity into a system, you're going to flourish. It's just how it is.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I'm more fascinated that you're this diehard of a Yankees fan, yet you worked for the Cubs.
Yeah, I did. Well, I worked for the organization that aired the Cubs.
Well, okay.
Yeah, I would have worked for the Cubs though. I would have been totally fine, and I would have said on the air that I liked the Cubs if they had paid me enough money to do it. It would have moved over.
It all comes down to the dollars.
Well, yeah, I never would have said I don't like the Yankees though. I think I would have kept that. My dream job is to work for the Yankees at some point.
I was raised. This is my dad will murder me for even saying this, and so will some people listening to this. So I was raised a Cardinals fan.
Sure,
Family's all a Cardinals fan. I became a Cubs fan. All right. This is mostly because I was going to school in Chicago, lived about 3 blocks from Wrigley Field, and I would skip class all the time to go to Cubs games because at the time it was half price bleacher tickets. They never sold out the games. It was like $7 to go to a game.
Yeah.
So we'd go hang out in the bleachers, and I just naturally became a Cubs fan. So now I root for both. It's kind of a coin toss if I go see Cardinal games.
Your brother hates you for that.
My brother
does. They all hate you. But at one point, going to a Cubs game was like going to the best bar in Wrigley. Like, you didn't even really watch the game. A lot of people. I did. A lot of people didn't. They would be hammered by the 3rd inning.
And now it's just an absolute money printer. I was at a bachelor party in August.
Sure.
We sat at the rooftop across the way.
The rooftops are.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was such a fun experience to go be a part of that atmosphere. It was awesome.
I haven't sat on one of those rooftops since they
Pricey,
put the giant screens in there. Do the screens obstruct the view at all?
A couple of the rooftops no longer.
Oh
have
no,
it.
we didn't have any. I guess maybe there was a
They
little.
complained
obstructed
about it.
view.
A little bit,
See
but
parts of like left field, but
Yeah.
enough to get. I was fine.
I've been to a few concerts up there now, where we did rooftop for the concerts.
It's fun.
Nice.
It was pretty cool. It was a pretty good experience. What's your best GN story with the Cubs?
I just remember losing the Cubs. And then actually the other crazy thing is they launched a sports station for a little bit, and this is public. Like, I'm not breaking anything that's new here, but that one guy got fired and found out about it live on his show with the boss as the co-host. So the boss was actually the guy that's doing the show with him, and the whole station went under. So everybody's gone, and he's on Twitter finding that out. And that was like some time close to when we lost the Cubs. But I just remember every part of those conversations. And we had a boss who'd walk down the hallway and be like, "You want the Cubs? You want the Cubs?" And everybody would be like, "Yes" or "No." And I think that went into his opinion on whether or not they wanted to keep the team. And it was crazy because the amount of money, actually, you probably know a lot about this, the amount of money in the broadcasting of these games.
It's insane.
It's the only thing that people still consume live. Sports. And so the amount of money that's being thrown from whatever, broadcast company it is to these organizations is incredible. So it's one of the biggest parts, that I think the biggest challenges.
Even down to the collegiate level, because we're seeing a lot of, in what we do every day from the AV perspective, some of these facilities that are being built now and some of the AV that's being put into these places.
Tons of money.
Huge amounts of money. And I keep thinking to myself, man, one of my first comments, I said, what are they charging for? This is why tuition is so expensive.
Yeah.
I'm not going to afford to send my kids to school. Then I realized, no, it's all NCAA money coming in and broadcast money coming in.
I guess the one other thing that was cool when you work at those places is the free tickets and the people who come in and record stuff. Like Cubs came in to the station to record things and people go crazy. I never took a photo with anybody. I'm one of those guys that thought that like asking you for a photo made me less cool than just standing there and being like, I don't need a photo. We're just two guys hanging out.
Those guys appreciate people like you more.
I think they do.
I think they do.
But here's the thing. Now I look back on it, and my friends are all sharing all their photos with all these famous people, and I've got no photos with famous people. And I'm like, why didn't I take like one? I called the game. It was high school baseball. Muhammad Ali sat next to me the entire game. He came in, they knocked on my door. They're like, "Can Muhammad Ali come and sit in here?"
What are you going to say to that?
Well, I looked at him like, sure, yeah, bring whoever you want. Bugs Bunny can come too. And then in comes Muhammad Ali. Layla was with him. There were some other people, like a whole group. And he sat here. There's a window, and then there's me. And I'm the only Jamoke who didn't take a photo. Everyone else got a photo with that guy.
That would have been a great photo.
It would have been a great photo. We're sitting right next to each other. I didn't do it. I don't know.
Oh, man. You know what I love about Craig? He's a radio guy, so he knows how to use a microphone.
Yeah.
Every one of our other guests is like,
oh, yeah.
I can tell I go back and forth too, but yeah, he's real close.
I'm always adjusting for Pat.
So you got the Shure. These are very, very nice microphones.
Actually, Shure sponsored our podcast. I called them. They sent me all these microphones and headphones and all this stuff, which is great to have some connections up there. We are a very large Shure dealer, so we do tons of business with them.
These are the best microphones. I don't have these in my studio. These are so fancy.
Actually, I'm gonna give her crap for it, but the Shure rep was supposed to come in right now and record, and she canceled on us.
Out on us.
Oh,
yeah, it was a family thing.
Well, they're only so okay.
Family
microphones.
I'll let it slide.
Yeah, there you go.
But no, great. Thank you for coming on,
Sure.
man. Appreciate it. We talked a little tech. I knew we'd talk a lot of baseball.
Sure.
There's nothing wrong with that. So
I could have gone on for hours. We
I
can have
coulda too.
we can have a repeat of this.
That's
We'll
fine.
do this down the
we'll,
line.
we'll move it
again.
into your show next.
Awesome.
And we'll go from there. So great. Craig Collins, 1470 WMBD. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Thanks, guys.
Great having you.
That was fun.